7:42, you're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Time to go through the papers now. And joining us this morning, the co-founder of the Together Association, Alan Miller, and journalist and author Ella Whelan. Welcome to you both.
Morning.
I wonder what we should talk about. I mean, there's only one big story in town, but actually, Alan, you're looking at it from a different way. That there was a secret government unit that was about suppressing free speech during COVID. Can you explain?
Yes, indeed.
It's in the Telegraph, yeah?
It's in the Telegraph, and it was called the Counter Disinformation Unit. It still exists. There was also a rapid response unit of the Cabinet Office, and what the Telegraph is doing in a consistently very important journalistically range of presenting these stories is delving down deeply, and we've seen that what actually happened was that 90% on a daily basis, the person who's now been named as Sarah Connolly, who's in the civil service, who's actually heading this unit up, was in discussions with social media platforms to actually have deleted and suppressed comments, questions by a range of citizens. So effectively, a spy unit that originally was set up to counter terrorism was used against British subjects who were raising questions and asking questions and challenging things, and some of them might have said outlandish things, but we were told it's about following the science, a very strange term because science is about inquiry and critical debate and thinking about things, and so we've seen this now. It's a very, very important story, and it's linked to in the centre pages. We've got a situation where the BBC has also commented on this. They were actually at these meetings of the Counter Disinformation Unit. They said that their official statement is that they were only there as observers, but several BBC journalists have complained of a culture where you weren't allowed to talk about lockdowns, you weren't even allowed to, in terms of using their name at the start of it, you had to say restrictions and limits, that any attempt to criticise or question the ideas around them were snubbed out by the editorial team. So some really significant questions.
It does raise valid points, right? And I totally agree it needs to be looked at, but you've got to be a little bit careful, haven't you, in the sense that there's a difference between, or free speech has changed, hasn't it? And I'm all for free speech, but there's a difference between being able to say these things and putting it on social media where some people read it and believe it to be the truth.
Yes, herein lies the key thing, Stephen. It's absolutely the right point. So, obviously, every discussion about free speech is predicated on the idea that us, ordinary people, the great unwashed, might suddenly get terrible ideas in their head and not be able to work it out. Of course, there needs to be, we've heard a lot about fact checkers, we've heard about, and I think journalistic standards have gone down significantly. I think if news journalists were able to report the news, we've got far too much activist news, far too much opinion-based, and when we saw those press conferences, they were tub-thumping, cheerleading, who's going further, which journalists can say, why aren't you going even further? Where were the critical questions, not even saying, I think you should do something differently, that's a different position, but raising questions about something that had never been done before, the efficacy of them, the consequences, the harms, the collateral damages. Why was it the case we often were only presented with a one-sided view, and the public were terrified? We already saw things like we're going to scare the pants out of them. Surely the role within media would be to raise investigative questions and things, not just to be a PR supporter. And I think that there's two things here. One is the role of the media, but the role of the government. And David Davis has come out and said that they should be disbanded, this unit, and because the Rapid Response Unit is now defunct from the Cabinet, but the DCMS had set it up and it now still exists. Ironically, you can't make this up Orwellianly, in the Department for Science and Innovation and Technology. So we've got this CDU still in existence, and it applies equally to other areas around the environment and others where questions are important.
Yeah, you can't suppress questions. No. I want to move on just because we're a bit tight for time this hour. This is actually also in the Telegraph. Labour's scrapped the pledge on green tech and jobs. this was meant to be what was going to drive growth in the economy, wasn't it?
Well, this was meant to be Labour's flagship policy. I mean, this they've been talking about this for a very long time. Been the kind of bit of a kind of heat at the moment that they now have, where they are gearing up to, well, they say they're gearing up to take power as the next party of government. It's all seemed to have U-turned. Rachel Reeves has announced that their flagship policy, the £28 billion a year on new green jobs, meant to completely reorganise the economy around the idea of green prosperity, it hasn't been scrapped. She says that what's going to happen is it's got to be put on, be more realistic about it, that it will take place, they will reach the £28 billion target in the second part of the first term in Parliament. But she essentially she's basically saying the economy is so bad because of the Conservatives that we can't do it, we don't have the levels of growth, and rather than upset you all when we fail to try to do it, we're going to manage expectations now. So, it's not, they haven't completely given up on the idea of reorganising the economy around green jobs, but it's basically saying we're not going to be able to do it, we have to scrap that pledge. And the Telegraph's got a little column on the side here that talks about all the other pledges that Labour has scrapped, from tuition fees to Keir Starmer's comments around free movement, public ownership, all that stuff that he was previously backing when he was, in a working relationship with Jeremy Corbyn, to now seeming like he's completely against. But the thing about the green jobs issue is that this hasn't just come out of the blue. I suspect that this is in large part due to the fact that Gary Smith from the GMB union has, it's been this week, I think I've lost track of time, came out and said that Labour was deluded in thinking that it was right to send the country off a cliff edge by basically demonising oil and gas production, that it was going to cost working class jobs, that it was going to be detrimental to people, not just people's energy bills, but the economy at large. So I think they've had a bit of a panic moment and thought actually he might be, funny enough, a GMB union leader might be right about working class jobs. So this is kind of welcome news, but it's the fact that the Labour Party hasn't yet given up the idea of the politics around it. They just think that they can't meet the monetary targets, but they haven't questioned the politics behind recentering the economy around a green agenda is probably quite depressing.
Yeah.
It's not a great look when you're thinking of an election being only a year away.
No.
No, it's not. We've got to leave it there, sadly. Alan, we'll see you in the next hour. Thanks very much indeed.